Good evening from New Jersey. And,
Alabama.
all right, I am Ria, call sign N2RJ, and
I am Kat, W4DXY, also known as Dixie DX.
cool beans. Okay. All right, so tonight we have Two Chicks in a Radio, and this is your weekly dose of amateur radio awesome. And good evening to everybody wherever you are worldwide, and also if you're on a replay, because I know we have a fair number of people on a replay as well. So, in choosing tonight's topic, I kind of had a discussion with Kat, and she was, she's of course studying for a general. And one of the things that came up is after the license, because the license only gets you so far, right? You have to do stuff after a license. How do you actually build out your station? And tonight we're going to be talking about that, and I have some tips I learned along the way. And this will be a pretty nice episode. All right. But before we go, if you do not want to miss an episode, you can subscribe to both of our channels. They're listed in the description below, and you will find the show listed on both of our channels every week. So you can, follow along, and maybe you'll see something else that you like. I've been doing a lot of videos. And Kat, what have you been doing?
Not much of anything, Ria. I did a review video that's going to be coming up. I'm probably going to release it tomorrow. I'm going to finish it up tonight and release it tomorrow. So
cool. All right. Well, that's looking good. Looking forward to it. I have a couple review videos I'm working on as well. But anyway, let's get into the news. So, Kat, tell us what's on the news tonight.
All right. Hold on. Okay. So apparently in Nicaragua, there was an earthquake recently. So basically, they've asked for clear frequencies during this time. So the earthquake occurred offshore in North Pacific, some 60 miles from Chinandega, and approximately 52 miles southwest of the resort town of Hakilio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I had to.
It's okay.
It's fine.
Yeah. All right. So yeah. So usually, as is the case, whenever there's a natural disaster, it's because one of our, okay, such a joker. One of our primary basis and purpose is to help out in times of emergency. And often when an emergency happens, we have to basically leave the frequencies clear for emergency traffic, and and that's cool. Just one or two frequencies. So they so guys, watch out for those frequencies. 7098 and 7198. So 7098 should be less of a problem for us here in the US because it's outside of our phone band. But 7198 you got to watch out for. And unfortunately, some people, they don't respect that emergency communications, but you should definitely stay clear, give them the opportunity. It'll just be for a little while to carry out their emergency communications. And then, it'll go back to normal. It's a good thing to do. All right. What else is on the news tonight?
I muted myself. All right. So this is one of the things that is near and dear to my heart because this is also another hobby that my dad thoroughly enjoyed, which is trains. So apparently Railways on the Air, which is in the UK, will take place on actually this Saturday and Sunday. So it's actually going to celebrate the first steam engine service between Darlington and Stockton of 1825.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. Let me share the screen because I want to show some of these things. Now I like railroads, but mostly because my son used to like steam trains, right? I think he still does. So you might, I don't know if you'll know this, but they have the different frequencies here: 3.65, 715, 14.25,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll have it on the 25th and 26th of September. Now, one of the things about railways is that Morse code is like big in amateur radio, right? But before Morse code really wasn't used, and the telegraph really wasn't used on the radio. It was used by the railroad
Mm-hmm.
telegraphers, okay? And they passed messages and such like that. And they were tightly entwined with the railways. So that's pretty cool stuff. All right. Well, what else is on the news tonight?
Well, apparently there is a proposal to ban all 300 to 200 megahertz transmissions in SZM. So this is the shield zone of the moon, and this would also be applicable to Mars.
Okay.
Yeah, this guy's hacking, bro.
So, yeah. So, okay. I think the main thing that's going to affect is basically, especially from Mars communications, right? And there apparently are two satellites. I think they were launched by China, which are orbiting the far side of the moon, and they have amateur payloads on them. So those are probably going to stop transmission. So that will have a marginal effect if you're an avid satellite enthusiast. But other than that, it's probably not going to affect most people. But it is going to be pretty interesting to see if that actually goes through and if what effect it has. And I think there's one more news item.
Yes, there is. So
right.
hey, hold on, give me a second.
Yeah.
Something's going on.
What's going on?
No idea. Everything logged me out for a second. It gave me an error.
All right.
So
well, I could say this one if you
Okay, that's fine. I apologize.
Yes. No worries. So the ARRL and the RSGB are going to announce joint events to celebrate the centenary of ham radio transatlantic success. So basically, in 1921, the ARRL, and back then they didn't have W and K and all of that stuff. They had just like how I would be. So if I was back in that day, I'd be 2RJ. I would not be N2RJ if I still had that call sign. So they had Paul F. Godley, 2ZE. He was listening for amateur signals from North America during the second transatlantic tests. So he set up a listening station on the west coast of Scotland, and he received signals from more than 24 U.S. amateur radio stations. On the first, on December 12th, from 1 BCG in Connecticut, which was operated by the members of the Radio Club of America. And it's pretty cool. So, of course, now transatlantic communication is really no big deal. And there are technological advances, and, we have new wireless records and all sorts of stuff. So it's some pretty cool stuff. So if you go to awrl.org/transatlantic and rsgb.org/transatlantic-tests, you will see information there. And I'm just going to drop that in chat so people can take, Somebody said your eyes were keying out.
What does that mean?
That means that the green screen, because you put green screen, it's going.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. It's just funny. All right. Okay. All right. So that is the news. All right. And, right. So I really, truly appreciate everybody joining us tonight from wherever you are. And, I've kind of been thinking about my, frankly, my future as a ham radio operator. Not only future, but my activities. I reevaluate my activities from time to time, and I'm an avid HF operator. But I realize a lot of people are new to HF. I also like VHF, UHF weeks ago. So yeah. So anyway, But my understanding, Kat, is you are gearing up for your general,
Yes.
and general opens up a world of HF. Of course, technician has HF already in a very limited amount of HF, but general opens it up. So, tell me, we're going to ask, and of course, you guys and gals in the audience too can ask about setting up your own HF station. So let me know what you want to, know about setting up your HF station, because I can tell you a lot.
Well, I know that it's important to have space. So I have two different options I could actually do. I could actually do in the front of the house, where I have no power lines at all. Or I can set it up in the back where I do have power lines. And my dad's made a Coax box outside for when he had satellite and stuff, and cables and stuff running into the house. So I'm sure I could use that, even though it's not being used anymore, for the other cables in the house in the bedroom. So,
all right. So yeah, so you touch on a very important point, and I'm gonna share something for you here. Well, I don't think I need to share it, but for many people, if I could just get this out the charger, this is their entire experience in ham radio. Okay.
handheld.
There's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with this. Okay. There's nothing wrong with this. It's a very valid way to enjoy amateur radio. And for years, actually, I was a VHF, UHF repeater operator. But then, I got bitten by the HF bug. First, I got started in mobile, and then I did some portable operation, and then we got a house, and then put up antennas and big antennas. So yeah, so the difference between this is that this is virtually no room. Okay, you could put this on your pocket, or even if you use an external antenna, it's not too big. For HF, everything changes. For effective communication, you kind of need a big setup, right? And as you mentioned, power lines. So you mentioned you had power lines. Are these like your regular house power lines, or the big high tension power lines?
These are regular house power lines because they're on the back side of the property. So they're not running to the house like they're running to the house, but they're like not majorly. My dad actually has a post outside this one room, which is the living room. And there's still a satellite dish on top that's not been taken down. So
is it like a direct TV antenna?
It's either direct TV or dish.
Okay. Okay. Well, so it's a small dish. It's not a big one.
It's about that normal size, I guess.
Yeah, it's a pizza-sized dish. It's not like an 8-foot dish.
No.
Right. Okay.
This is like a extra large pizza from Papa John's size dish.
Okay. It's not really pizza, but yeah. Yeah. And Ed, it really is a Radiotti GD77. I banged around this radio so much, I basically threw this all over the place and nothing happened to it. It's a very rugged little radio.
Now, I have another option. My dad's got an outside building that is it's not insulated, but it is got power to it. And I could clean it out, and I could use it as a ham shack.
Okay.
It does have a ceiling fan in it for AC.
Yeah. There are pros and cons to each. So let's start with the building then, right? And then Carlisle Forrester says, I'm setting up the garage as my shack because his wife wants nothing like radio in the house. That seems kind of a problem, but I know a number of people who have external cam shacks, and I think that might be a good option for some. But me, I don't like like in the winter time, I mean, we have a barn on the property here, right?
Mhm.
And I could make that into a ham shack, but I don't know. I like the idea of being in one place. But I'll show you here. I'll see if I could bring him up. There's this guy who's a member of our contest club, Mark K2AX, and he has a big an external building. Well, I want to see if I could show you. I guess I can't show you this. But anyway, a lot of people choose external buildings. External buildings are nice. I mean, you have the consideration of you have to heat and cool that building in winter and summer, respectively. And then you have to, electricity is not really a problem. But believe it or not, electricity, and you know, I'm kind of working on a video with electricity and ham radio here. Your ham station, it could consume a little or a lot of electricity. But if you have an external building and if you're using an amplifier, you need to make sure you have 220 volt supply, right? But that's we're coming to that down the road. So if you go for the external building, you have the plus of it being self-contained, but then again, it is self-contained, so you can't reach into the kitchen without going back to the house. But then you have isolation from family stuff, and you have extra room. You could put things that'll normally make noise and such like that, right? Like like fans and stuff and amplifiers, you know.
Mhm.
But I don't think you originally wanted to use an amplifier, right? You initially. So
I have
tell
an
me.
amplifier.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes.
Is it dad's?
No, it's just it's one I got from MFJ.
Okay. What kind of amplifier is it? Is it a big one or a small one?
It's like small.
Okay. Is it like an Ameritron brand?
No, it's not.
Okay.
I forgot what it is. Hold on.
Okay. Trying to find it. So
Yeah, I'm trying to find it.
I had an Ameritron AL811H, and that I think is the world's most popular amateur radio amplifier. It wasn't that loud, right? It's not that loud, but it could be loud. I have the Flex Radio Power Genius XL. That one's a little bit loud if I run it at continuous high power. But if I run it just talking on a microphone or, you know, using Morse code, it's not really that loud. But that could get loud. So that's one of the advantages of a separate building. The other advantage of a separate building is that you don't have to damage your house poking holes through the wall to run coax, because, you know, you need to get that coax outside, right? Do you know if any ideas to get the coax outside? Or are you just going to run it through a window?
I have no idea, but I do have windows, but
Right.
with that external building being the way it is, and that it's up off the ground, so it's not on a slab, it's actually on cinder blocks.
Right.
Okay. And everything like that, then it's not that bad. And I could probably run it through the floorboard.
Yeah, I have a friend who actually uses crawl space, but I'll show you what a lot of hams use as far as getting their coax out, okay? And what I did for a long time was I put it through the window, but I put a window plate, right? And that is like this here, this thing, okay? So this is like a plate, and you run your coaxes through, and then you have you have like wing nuts for, like, I guess, like ladder line and such like that, and then you have coax feed throughs. So you could easily put this in like a piece of wood or a piece of plexiglass. You put that right at the bottom of the window, and then, you know, you could remove that if you need to remove it. Like, let's say, I know a lot of people unplug for lightning and stuff. I don't believe in that stuff. I just ground everything. But if you want to do that, you could do that. If you want to remove it to, you know, like if it's cold in the winter, I don't know how cold, I don't think it gets that cold there, but here it gets, you know, below zero sometimes. So you could do that. That's one way to do it. And yeah, that's one way to feed your coax in through. The other way, like you said, is through the bottom. The other one is you drill a hole through the wall. And drilling a hole is really not that bad because you can actually replace that piece of siding or replace the, the plywood that's on the side of the house with no real problem. I mean, it's not like much,
Well,
you know.
Well, the building is crawl space. The house is
Mhm.
crawl space, but the downstairs room where I could also put it at is not crawl space. It is actually slab.
Okay. Well, okay. So you might have a problem then, getting through the bottom there. But I think going through the wall is good. You know what some people have also done? Like a dryer vent. Like you could get somebody to install a dryer vent, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you install a dryer vent, you could use that as a coax feed through. And you just like stuff it up with, with something to keep like mice and stuff out, or you insulate it with a little bit of insulation just to keep everything out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's see what else here. So that is one big consideration, right? Getting the coax out. And let's see here. We got Cindy Long, who's a tech class operator studying for a general test next month. All right, Cindy, we wish you the best of luck. And stick around. We'll give you some ideas for your HF station when you do get your general, right? And Joe says he's in his garage. He's in Southern California, so he doesn't really have to worry about winters. Yeah, okay. I mean, I know California has nice weather year round, so that's pretty cool. Okay, all right. Okay, so the building is one thing. The antennas are another thing. You mentioned power lines. You definitely have to stay away from power lines because if your antenna falls on the power lines, one, that's deadly. Okay, that especially those high voltage distribution lines, those are not to be played with. The other thing you have to worry about is power line noise, right? So the closer you are to the power line, the more susceptible you are to noise. Do you experience power line noise there?
No.
No? Okay. And your power company maintains the lines really well probably, but I think that still the closer you are, you still get power line noise. And all my wiring's underground, by the way, so I have a different problem. If I have to dig anything, I have to call them and they'll mark it out. I know where it is now though. But yeah, that is two things you have to consider with the actual building and the antenna. And let me show you some antennas. What kind of antenna do you plan to put up?
Right now I have the Chameleon and I have the Diamond VX30A. That's it.
Okay.
As far as the antennas I have right now.
What kind of antenna is a Chameleon?
It's the impasse light. So it's the baby brother to the 2.0. So it can do inverted V. It can do all sorts of things. It's a very, I'm trying to think of the word. My mind just went, choo!
So I'm looking up, to be honest, and I'll tell you something, I am not familiar with a lot of these commercially built antennas, except for my friend Emmett from Radio Waves. I know his antennas, but so this looks like a okay, so it's a wire antenna. Okay, that's could be a vertical, horizontal. I better I share this. And,
it has lots of different applications. You can do a lot of different antenna
right.
modes with it, so it's very good. Okay. How far is my house from the power lines? I don't know.
Okay, so this is your antenna, right? The impasse light. Is that it? Can you see it?
Yeah, that's it. I think it's the power lines are 100 feet from the house, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know. I haven't measured, but they are above. Right. They're above ground, so they're not underground. So that's good.
Okay. So LW of Jax says for HF antenna feed line, can I use old coax cable that was used for DirecTV dish? The answer to that technically is yes. Okay. And a lot of people's head are going to explode because I said yes. But I would prefer not to for two reasons. One, it's very thin coax, and unless you have quad shielded coax, it's not shielded very well. One. Two, it's 75 ohm. So essentially what happens is when you have coax feed line, right, there is something called the impedance, which is the, and you know, in one of my early videos, I kind of got flack from some of my viewers that say, don't pronounce it impedance. Okay, I'll pronounce it impedance. So impedance, right, must match your radio. Otherwise, you're going to have a mismatch and you're going to have standing waves generated in the line. Essentially, what this means is that some of the power is reflected back in the line, stays in the line, and then heats up the coax. So it's wasted as heat, and it could also damage your transceiver's final amplifier. So the best thing to do is to have a matched system. 75 ohm coax will work. Funny thing is, at certain lengths, it'll appear to be completely fine, completely resonant, but at some of them, it will have exhibit a high SWR. I would recommend, if you could, in the same space that RG6 is run, you could run a length of RG58 at least, if you're not running RG213, I want to say RG174, but I think that's really thin. If you could get RG213, it's a little thicker than the RG6, but you can use that, and it's not too expensive, and that will provide you much superior performance on HF. Now on VHF and above, I would definitely recommend you replace it, because a mismatch on VHF and above has a much more pronounced effect compared to on HF. If you look at an SWR meter, which is the meter on the radio that tells you basically your SWR, or basically it's an analog to, it's proportional to reflected power, right? So some of that power is being reflected back. It's not going up to your antenna. You want to have that as low as possible, okay? And on VHF and UHF, you know, a mismatch of 1.5 to 1 could cause you to lose a lot more in terms of actually getting out than on HF. So HF tends to be a little more forgiving, by the way. So that's a good question, right? And you don't need to be 50 ohms. So you know what? I saw the same thing, Mike. Mike, it's kind of funny because one of my pictures on Facebook, my profile pictures, has me pointing up to a lamp, and people thought I was giving it the bird. Okay. Right. So yeah, and that's what's her name? The cat?
Her name is Raven.
Okay, you see? So Raven. Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what about small spaces like studio apartments? Okay, so for antennas for studio apartments, you're going to be up for a little challenge, I think.
Well,
It depends on...
VX30A is a good one, especially if they have a balcony.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, if you have a balcony, you could go with a vertical antenna. If you, when I lived in New York, actually, and lived in Manhattan, I had a vertical on the balcony, and as long as you don't interfere with your neighbors, you're fine. You know. But if you have a garden, like a backyard, you could put up a little vertical. The only thing about antennas is you need to watch out for your landlord, the super, or your neighbors, because some of them don't mind their own business, right? Which is why I don't like living in an apartment. You can put up something there. If you don't have any of that, you're restricted to a few options. One of the options is a compromise indoor antenna, such as a magnetic loop. And the magnetic loop, I will show you, and this is from a radio club. I wonder if they have a picture of that. They're basically, yeah, this is it. So this is, they have YouTube videos here. All right. This antenna, the magnetic loop, is basically a, let's see here. All right. I think they have it. Okay. On eBay. Well, let's give this a shot and see. I'll show you here. Bear with me 1 second here. Right. So this antenna here is called a magnetic loop. Right. It's basically a it's a coax loop here, and you see you have a little tuning loop here, and then you have the tuning capacitor below here, and that could work indoors. That could work in limited space. I actually worked. My friends from hamradio.world, the Leah family, I worked them in Florida from New Jersey on 40 meters on a little indoor loop, and they were fine with that, right? So that is one thing. Yeah, and you could use that. That's one option. With apartments, it gets a little more hairy. You can also, there are very creative ways. If you live high up, what I used to do in Manhattan was I used to, let me stop this here. I used to actually hang a wire out with a tennis ball at night, and I put a little fishing rod out. Okay, just wait for the super to kind of like, go away at night, and then I tuned that up, and I was going to, and I operated that. I made a lot of contacts that way. All right, let's see here. I'm antenna shopping now. Want to cry seems, yeah, So this is the nice thing about antennas, okay? You don't have to buy an antenna. You can build an antenna for cheap. Although with the price of copper wire and building materials, it's kind of crazy. But you can build an antenna. I would really invest in a couple of books. You could get the ARRL antenna book. I get copies of the antenna book. I own several editions of them. Even the older ones are completely fine. All right. And they have a lot of the same information, and they will tell you what kind of antennas. So yeah. Dave Kassler, he has some great mag loop videos. Those are great. I might do a couple too. But don't think that you need to buy an antenna. If you can, the mag loops from W2LI are great. And I'm not just saying that because they're my friends, but they're great. They make a good antenna. And they'll back it up. They're a very, very good club. All right. Mike Hamilton, who commented about my picture. I'm going to fix that, but that's funny. Okay. Do you think that amateur radio is going the way of GMRS in the future? I don't think so. I don't think you're just going to pay and get a license. I think there'll always be a technical test. What do you think, Kat? You think they're ever going to remove the exams for ham radio?
No, I don't think they're going to keep it.
Yeah, what I think they might do is they'll just probably expand the privileges of CB radio, which they've done. They're actually allow you to work DX on CB radio, like, make distant contacts on CB radio. And on GMRS, you can have that for local contacts and repeaters. So that's good. All right. So we covered the antennas. We covered the building. All right. Let's talk about radios. What do you have in mind for radios?
Well, I just have the ICOM 7300 in mind as to which one I'm really looking at the most.
Okay. And why did you choose the 7300? I'm not saying it's a bad radio. I'm just asking, what was your thought process behind that?
It's just I've used it on contests and stuff, and I've gotten used to using it.
Okay. So I think the ICOM 7300 is a fantastic radio. And I always tell people, take the advice you get on new radios with a grain of salt, because this is the ICOM 7300, by the way. It has a big knob. It's a software defined radio, which is amazing for the price. I mean, for $1,000, you get this performance of a radio. And this is not paid advertising by Icon, by the way. Okay, I don't own one of these. I own the 705. But this is a, I've used this, and for the price, it's a good radio. Other radios include the, let's see here. They have the FT91A, which is a, radio by Yaesu, right? Let's see here. And you have the Flex radios, which are kind of a little more advanced, right? They're a little more pricey. But if you want something, if you have the money, you could get one of these too, right? I'll tell you about bad first radios. For your first radio, and a lot of people are going to probably throw some tomatoes here, don't buy a QRP radio as your first radio. Okay? Don't buy an ICOM 705 unless you have an amplifier with it as your first radio, because running 5 to 10 watts with a compromised antenna is going to be frustration. The only time I would say get one of these is if you have a good Elmer to help you with it and you have a heaping of patience. Okay? You need to have a lot of patience to use these radios.
Yes, I've used the 705 out on a POTA, and it was definitely, if you don't know what you're doing, it's definitely
harder. For the patient ham. Yeah. So, you know what else kind of radio to avoid? You see these radios that are labeled 10-meter ham radios? I would avoid them like the plague. You know why?
Why?
Now, let's see what this 10-meter radio really is. It's an 11-meter radio in disguise. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. So anyway. Hey, Ray. Nice to hear you. I think his ears were burning when I mentioned the 7300.
His ears were always burning when you mention anything ICOM. I swear, up and down. He knows, and he just pops on because he's like, ICOM. They're talking about ICOM? Ooh, wait, let me hop on real quick. What channel are they talking about it on? Ooh.
I really think, though, I mean, and I'll tell you, I really think that what they did with the 7300 was a really good in terms of getting SDR to the mainstream who likes knobs, and also to get a really good performing radio at a good price. Previously, I mean, the choices, when I first became a ham, I told my Elmer, I said, hey, I want to buy this Radio Shack HTX 10. And he's like, what? No, he said, no. You need a proper 100 watt HF radio, or at least something with enough power. So somebody here, Daniel L, says, my first HF is a Zygu G90. That's frustrating in hell. Getting only 600 to 100 educational. I'm not saying a low power radio is bad. I like my 705 for what it is. It's a portable radio that I could use low power. I could throw that in a backpack. I could walk and hike with it and get my mental health therapy, as we saw in some other video. And, I can definitely go and operate POTA. It's a POTA radio. It's a dream for POTA operators, right? It's not 100 watts, so it's for the patient ham. Really, it is. And I think if you have a Elmer to help you to get the most out of that 10 watts, you can get as your first radio. For VHF and UHF, I think, as a replacement for a handheld radio, when I was working when I was in New York City, we did a lot of communications with the public service events, and these guys used to carry around like the FT817 on their back, and they had a little whip antenna, and they used that in place of a handheld, a little speaker mic. So yeah, but the G90 is not too bad, but yeah, I would be really frustrated with anything but at least 100 watts. When you get more experience, you can lower down the power. So anyway, right. So anything else about radios you figured out, Kat, that you wanted to to learn about radios? Your first radio.
No, not really. I've just kind of got my eyes set on that one, on the 7300, because I already have the Heil Sound Pro 7s that are made for the 7300.
Okay. And I'll tell you this as well. Buying a nice radio is nice, but a nice radio is useless without a nice antenna. Okay? And you don't have to have a tower and a beam, but if you're buying a $10,000 radio to run with a $5 dipole, okay, you're wasting your time and money. Right? It's better you get the most antenna you can afford, and then you get a radio with decent performance. So something like
So in other words, you want your radio to match to be on a beer budget, so to speak, versus champagne taste.
I'm trying to think of an equivalent comparison
to the antenna that you are getting.
Right. So it's kind of like this, right? You wanna make sure, because your antennas are ultimately your interface to the world, right? Your antennas, push out your signal, okay, and they receive the signal too. The antennas are ultimately what convert the electrical current into radio waves, and vice versa. I would definitely say that that is the most important component, and don't get too hung up in gain figures, but get something decent size, like a dipole or a vertical, or if you live in an HOA or something, flagpoles will work too, right? So Walter, like I said, it's not a bad radio. I think though that if you don't have good propagation or a good antenna, you might get a little frustrated with the low power. But if it works for you, it works for you. Yeah. 891. No built-in sound card. Oh, that's an important thing. Have you ever operated digital modes?
Yes, I've operated D-Star.
Okay, but HF and nothing on HF, right?
Nah.
All right, so on HF, you're going to encounter FT8, okay? And FT8 is the most popular digital mode. When you're working DX, you can actually use the FT8 digital mode, or there are other digital modes too, like RTTY, radio teletype, the PSK31, Olivia, and such, which are decent digital modes to use. They're keyboard to keyboard. You can have chat. Have you ever heard of JS8 call?
Yes.
Right. So JS8 call is a messaging mode that uses the underlying FT8 protocol, and those work well. But a good point here by K4NYX radio, no built-in sound card. So again, you find a lot of these radios, like the 7300, have the sound card built in, and all you need is a USB cable. You plug those in, you plug that into your computer. It comes up, it comes up as a sound card, a USB sound card. I think in some operating systems you might install a driver, and then you just configure your software to use that as a sound card, and you're in business. Whereas in the old days, I had to buy something called a signal link for my ICOM 756 Pro 3. I had to plug that in with 3 or 4 cables. I had to adjust levels and everything. It was a pain in the neck. Okay, actually the pain's much lower than that, but all right. So anyway, that's a good point. All right. But definitely look into digital modes, and I think when you pass your general, I think we want to do a live stream on digital modes. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Hello from Barbados. Hey, you know what? I'm from Trinidad, and the 718 ICOM. In Trinidad, we use a lot of ham radio operators there use the ICOM 718. Right. Hey, Simon, I appreciate the love from the UK. And let's see what else. All right. So we cover the radio, we cover the antennas. So some antennas, and this is we're going into controversial topic here. we talked about resonance. We talked about SWR being an resonance, a non-resonant antenna causing high SWR. Have you ever heard of using an antenna tuner?
Yes, I have.
Do you think they're good or bad?
Well, I think they're good.
Okay.
Definitely, because they can definitely help you get the SWR within the range you need it to be, especially when you're doing POTA and things in that nature. Definitely use that in Montesano.
Yeah. So the tuner is a little bit of a sore spot among ham radio operators. Some of them, they think tuners are the devil incarnate, right? They think that tuners are a waste of time, a waste of money. I used to kind of think so, right? But then again, like you said, the tuner helps you get the job done quickly, you know? And then,
Well,
yeah, Ray is saying,
yeah, he says why they call it an antenna tuner when they do not tune the antenna.
so, I think a lot of old timers, they got up in the thing. They said that basically it's fooling. They think the number one thing I used to always hear was that all an antenna does is fool your transceiver. Okay, that's not entirely true. What it does is it provides a match between the antenna, right, and the transmitter and receiver. So you can use an antenna that's not resonant at that particular frequency. So there's a mismatch, and then the tuner acts as an intermediary to then, match that mismatch. So your radio sees the proper load, and then the tuner will then translate that to the mismatched impedance. I have to remember not to say impedance. The impedance of the antenna.
You know what impedance is?
Yeah. The next video I made was about soldering, and then my British audience said, no, it's soldering. Okay? And I'm going to have some tea. Yeah. So I recently got a tuner, actually. I want to do a video on it, but it's the Flex Radio Tuner Genius XL. It's a computerized tuner. It connects via Ethernet. I also got the I want to get the AH705 when I do get around to ordering it for my ICOM 705, because it's fast when you throw up a wire antenna, and they have like the little dipole attachment at the top, I think. Yeah, I think Josh KI6NAZ, he showed that he had Ray on a live stream one time. We'll probably have Ray on sometime. But
yeah, probably would.
Yeah. So so it's the antenna tuners are not bad to have, okay? Auto tuners are nice. Auto tuners are, I think pretty much everybody's moving toward automatic tuners, right? So there's automatic tuners and manual tuners. Manual tuners kind of teach you, how to get things tuned, and they'll save you a little bit of money. But I think for the most part, a lot of people are kind of, just leaving those behind as the price of automatic tuners drop. At Montesano, what kind of tuners did you guys use? There's like an MFJ or something, or what? Or just the built-in one in the radio?
I don't remember.
Okay. So
I do know that we did use a rig expert on as well.
Okay.
So.
Well, the rig expert's an antenna analyzer, right?
Yeah,
that's a device for measurement. Okay.
Yeah.
But the tuner actually sits between the radio and the antenna, and then matches the mismatch. So this is an important.
I'm not for sure. I didn't set it up.
Okay. You will be when you get your HF.
Yes, I will be setting it up, but I did not have to set it up this time. I just relied on somebody else.
Okay. That's
I was like, here, a peasant, put it together.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is that a lot of radios come with antenna tuners built in, right? And those are good, but when you have an antenna tuner built into a radio, and this is something you need to remember, that antenna tuner in the radio is very limited in terms of the range of mismatch that it can, that it can tune. Generally, a radio's tuner can tune a mismatch of 3-to-1 SWR or lower, right? So you see the SWR goes up to like 3-to-1. The radio will tune that down, most of them. I think some of the older radios, like I think my ICOM 756 Pro 3, when you went above 2-to-1 SWR, it kind of had a problem. But anything below 2-to-1, it matched fine. But anything above that, like 3-to-1 SWR, anything above 3-to-1 SWR, built-in tuners and radios generally have a problem with them, right? That's when you get an external tuner. The external tuners can match up to 10-to-1 SWR. So you have an antenna that's so badly mismatched that it's 10-to-1 SWR. The external tuner will match that with no problem. The reason it does that is there is a lot more room inside the external tuner box, and it's not close to the rest of your radio's electronics. So they can put a lot more inductance and capacitance, in the tuning network, and a lot more combinations of those to get the SWR down. There's also the consideration of if you have too high a mismatch and you put too much power, sometimes you'll have arcing, like especially at high power, you'll have the voltage built up inside some of these inductors and capacitors. It will start to arc and it could damage components. Actually burn the LDG auto tuner that way. So what about using a tuner to actually tune the antenna itself? So there are tuners that let me see what you're trying to tell me about. So Junior, if you have something else that could expand on that, I'm not quite sure what you're talking about really, but there are several systems I use. One of them was a tuner that sits close to the antenna. It is right near the coax, right? As in it's at the end of the coax, near the tower or near the, where you have the antenna. This would be like an ICOM AH4 tuner or the new AH705, which is, it basically, you could put it close up to where the dipole is and then tune it, it'll not have much loss because it's right tuning at the antenna. That's probably one of the systems he's talking about. The other one is where you have something like a screwdriver antenna, which is on a mobile, which, so I had a setup in my old mobile where I had the tuning coil move up and down with a motor. And to control that, I had something called a turbo tuner, which was it had RF, it had a coax connection between the radio and the antenna. It measured the SWR, and then it would then adjust the coil for the lowest SWR for a perfect match, and then it would stop when it reached 1-to-1. That's one thing. Stepper antenna, and stepper has a tape where they move in and out, right? And I guess that's part of it. Ray is saying the AH4 is part of the antenna. Okay, so I guess it becomes part of the antenna system because you're actually attaching the antenna to the tuner. Okay, good point. I wouldn't count on any tuner in a radio. Well, Mel, you want to know something? Any port in a storm, if I'm out and I'm operating, in the field or I'm at home and I don't have an external tuner, then I will use what's in the radio until I can get something better. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So, so we talked the radio, we talked the location, we talked the tuner. So let's talk about wiring up your shack, okay? So you mentioned you had an amplifier, right? You still don't know what kind of amplifier it is. You have a model number or something, or
I'd have to go
'cause I could.
downstairs and grab it out of the box.
All right, no worries. Well, you don't have
So
to. It's a
I
very
couldn't figure it out.
okay. So if you're using an amplifier, a lot of amplifiers will plug into a regular wall outlet, right? A regular 120 volt wall outlet. This would be like the Ameritron AL811H. Even some of the solid state amplifiers could plug into a regular 120 volt outlet. But beyond, I think, like 900 watts, you can you will need a 240 volt connection. So you get an electrician to wire a 240 volt circuit. Or if you're handy with electrical, you can do that too.
Nope. I'll leave that up to the electrician.
Okay. Yeah. So you get an electrician to do it. An electrician will, wire. You want at least a 20 amp. You want a, well, you don't want at least, you want a 20 amp, 240 volt outlet for your amplifier. That should be plenty of power, right? And that will work with both 15 and 20 amps. A lot of hams, they like to put the twist lock plugs, the plugs that you plug in and you twist to lock. I don't really like those. I like to use the straight bladed 240 volt 620, they call it, right? The straight blade 620, because you could buy regular, cables for that. W. Kirby says, plug it into the dryer outlet. You probably can, and there was a company, I think QRO Technologies, who used to make amplifiers that you kind of needed to plug in to the dryer outlet. But
so just unplug the dryer and plug it instead. I got you.
Yeah. Oh, I think I dropped my radio oddity again. You don't, I don't think so. I don't think you should use a dryer. You should definitely have I think you should definitely have a dedicated circuit, a dedicated outlet for your ham shack. Because I don't think you want to necessarily have to hassle your dryer, and it might not be in the same room, right?
No, it's not. All right.
And you can't run an extension cord, Yeah. Oh, and Ranger Smith has a good point. Your dryer might be emitting RFI anyway, right? But maybe. So my brother, actually, incidentally, he went to he recently moved to Connecticut, and he bought a plug-in hybrid car, a Toyota RAV4 Prime, and he was asking me about electric car chargers because I'm part of the Tesla cult, right? And then he says, so what do you use to charge your car? I said, I have a Tesla wall connector. And then he says, well, I have a dryer outlet right by the garage. I'm just going to get a splitter and split it, So he's going to use that. So Kirtan KS, hey, thanks for checking in from India. Nice to see you guys. All right, and Gwen, nice to see you, Gwen. And G's repeat. All right. So we covered the radio, we covered the amplifier, we covered the tuner, we covered the antenna. Let's see what else you should be thinking about. What else in the ham shack? Coax. Okay, so you're
the type of coaxes that we should be using, because there's different kinds.
Yeah. So I actually did a whole video on coax and coax loss. For most HF, for short distance antennas, you can use RG213 coax, and but there's a very nice coax loss calculator, and I'll bring it up here, and I'll show you. I do have a whole video on it by CO8TW. Let's see it here. Okay. I want a coax calculator here. Right. So you go to qsl.net, and I'll drop this in the chat here where you can see it here. Right. Okay. So you can have this coax loss calculator here. So it lists a number of popular, I'm going to make this bigger just so people can see it, a number of different coax types. They even have the RG6 for some reason, right? Even though it's not recommended. All of these here, so this here is TV coax, the RG6. The RG8 is kind of fell out of favor right now. The RG8 kind of, I would not recommend use RG8 anymore because just RG213 is better and is more widely available, right? So generally for HF, you want to get RG213 cable. And they have a few others here. Now, if you want, Davis RF Berryflex, by the way, is what I use. It's similar to LMR 400 coax. And I also use Andrew Heliax, but this is mega expensive. So for the most part, you want to use RG213. Davis RF Berryflex is nice too. You could do a loss calculator to see here just how much you're losing. So let's say your antenna is 50 feet. Your the run away from your house is 50 feet. And let's say you're using this on 20 meters, 14 megahertz. Let's say you're doing it 1-to-1 SWR, 100 watts. You'll calculate 0.265 dB, which is really not bad at all. And this I think is the most important figure that you should be looking at, is how much power actually makes it to the antenna. Because on the receive end, on HF, the receive loss is not really that important, right? And this loss goes both ways. It goes transmit and receive. But when you look at the amount of power you're wasting in the coax, right, you're only wasting 6 watts here. Okay? So most of your power is going out. Even if you go to 100 feet, right, and you calculate that, then you lose like 11.5 watts, which is really not that much. But if you're like me, I have antennas 300 feet out in a field. See here where it begins to get a little more, iffy. So I don't actually use, and this antenna is actually on 3.5 megahertz, which is on the 80 meter band. So I still only lose 17 watts, but I actually use 1500 watts with this antenna. You see it's a little more dramatic at higher power. So I'm losing about 250 watts just in the coax alone. But I don't use Davis RF Berryflex. I actually use the Heliax LDF5. So I keep most of my power. Okay. So anyway, you can run this calculator here, right? And I dropped it in the chat. And then you can use that to help you make a good selection of coax. The main factors you're going to be looking at in the coax is how long, right? Your operating frequency. And this here basically determines your budget, okay? So if you're buying coax, some of these are more expensive. RG213 is not that expensive. Heliax is like $4 a foot, okay? The RG213 is less than $1 a foot, right? And so that's coax. I mean, let's see what our audience has any questions. Let's see here. Okay, this board some 8x. 8x is not bad really. Let's do the calculation for 8x. Let's see here. RG8X. Where is it? RG8. I don't see RG8X. Maybe somebody has eagle eyes here to see it. Oh, here we go. 9258. Duh. Okay. So let's go to 14 megahertz. Let's do a typical thing here. 100 watts. SWR 1-to-1. 14 megahertz. 20 meters. 50 feet. And calculate. Yeah, you're not losing a lot with the RG8X at all. And compare that to RG213. Let's see. It's not different at all. So the RG8X is really not that bad. So don't worry about it. You lose probably maybe about 3 watts more, and so that's negligible. Nobody's going to be able to tell on the other end. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we got here. Suppose you have 50 foot of LMR 400 and 50 foot of 8X. Do you add the losses of each cable together to figure total loss? So that's a good question. So yes, actually what you do is what you have to do is, yes, you're adding the losses in decibels. Okay. So you have one section that'll give you a loss of, let's say, 0.5 of a dB. And then you have another section that'll give you probably like maybe a quarter of a dB. You add those together because both of them are in one line. Now that is provided both of them are matched. Okay, those are matched. And if they're matched, if both are 50 ohms, they're not going to have any additional losses due to SWR. But if you have SWR mismatch, then it gets a little more complicated. You have to factor that in as well. So that is that's a good question here. And let's see here. Yeah, RG8X starts to suffer in VHF UHF. Yes. Davis RF is a good choice. Yeah, I like I said, I've used the Berry Flex. I've had it up on the tower for rotor loops and such. Each connection you add. Yeah, that is true. On VHF, I think you lose like a 0.3 of a dB, if I'm not mistaken, whenever you add a connection like a coax, and it also causes an impedance bump. So that could cause a problem, right? Let's see here. I take compromises. Yeah, true. So Kat, this is one important thing that I mentioned why, it's better to get a 100-watt radio, because with a 100-watt radio, you have more power to play with. So any loss is not going to be as noticeable as on a QRP, because, you only have a little bit of power to play with, right? And people get hung up about S meters and such, So anyway, all right. Let's see what else we didn't cover. Anybody else knows anything else we didn't cover? Okay. So, Kat, tell me your plans for HF. What do you want to do on HF? What do you want to, do? So we covered the station setup. What do you want to do on HF when you get your general?
I want to do contesting. I like contesting. That's really, really fun to do.
Okay. Contesting's a good thing. You want to do DXing? Okay.
Yeah, because it's really, really fun. And then maybe eventually get into doing POTOs and stuff. And maybe knock some people off their little thrones there.
That's ambition. Okay.
So might as well go for everything and knock them off their feet. It'd be bad if a girl came up and just out and whipped them all.
True. There's one thing to consider. If you have an amplifier and your antenna needs an amplifier, will the tuner in your radio help you? Ray, that is a very, very good point that I neglected to mention. And yes, so as we're going back to the tuner here, some amplifiers like the Ameritron amplifiers, they're tuned for, so you have like your, what I refer to as a core amateur radio bands, right? You have like 80, 40, 20, 15, 10, right? And I think 160 could be included in that too, but we're mostly looking at 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10. And then some amplifiers would say, well, you could use the 15 meter band switch position to work on 17 meters. And you could kind of use the 10 meter position to work on 12. But the radio will see a higher SWR. It'll see a slight mismatch. And for that, I think you really have no choice but to use the tuner. So that is strictly between, and there is some interaction with the antenna itself, right? So some of that SWR mismatch, some of that mismatch gets passed down through the amplifier to your radio. But the input network is really tuned for 15 meters, and then you get to 17 meters, and it's kind of like the radio's a little bit unhappy with the SWR. You use a tuner to tune that down. Okay, so that's an important consideration. That's good. Yeah. So yeah, no worries, Ray. I know what you meant. Hey, to Victor, I met him at a ham fest the other day. Kat, do you know that he actually is up in where are you at? You're
Is
in
that the
Schenectady,
YouTuber
right?
you met?
Yeah. I met him and one of his friends who was riding a motorcycle, I think.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
we talked about a lot of stuff. So it's nice to see you here, right? Grounding, that's a good one. What have you planned to ground your station?
I don't know how I'm gonna ground it. That's a
Okay.
good one though.
That is a good one, and I do definitely have a recommendation for you.
All right,
Get
what's
the
the recommendation?
the
Stick it straight in the
recommendation.
ground and hope for the best.
No, the recommendations is a book by Ward Silver, N0AX. It is the antenna, the grounding and bonding book. He talks a lot about grounding. Some of it is technical, but a lot of it is very practical, right?
Uh-huh.
So but the main idea with grounding is that you can have a separate ground for your station, but it must also be tied into your home's electrical ground because the National Electric Code requires that all grounds be connected together, you know? And so the grounding and book is amazing, and Gwen recommended that here. Yeah, and of course it's ARRL, so I like to plug ARRL. But Ward Silver is he's really knowledgeable on the topic. And if you guys have not seen this book, I have a copy. It's really good. They're actually coming out with a new revised edition, and they're going to but grounding is important because not only for safety, because your electrical panel has a ground for safety, right? Primarily for safety. But it also has it for lightning, okay? Your ham radio station needs it for lightning protection. You want to, and I'll show you the book here. Okay, so this is the book here, Grounding and Bonding for the Radio Amateur. It discusses a number of methods. It discusses ground rods, right? Where to put your ground rods, how to connect your ground rods, how to, and also how to make sure the wires are set up so that they're how should I put it? They're not encouraging lightning strikes or encouraging lightning to jump into your equipment and damage your equipment if you do get a strike. Also, it discusses coax entrance. So when your coax goes into your house, you should have something there that grounds it, right? And then passes that ground, connects that ground to the your station ground. So that's good. Yeah. All right. That's a very good point. Whoever brought up grounding there, I think that's a good
Mel.
point. Mel, thank you very much. All right. And also Gwen, yes. Gwen, thank you for that suggestion. All right. Let's see here. And then to ground or not to ground, that's a question. You have to ground. Okay. I think for lightning protection alone, you need to ground your station. I don't consider that negotiable at all. Yeah.
Especially with all the weather we get around here.
Oh yeah, you're like in Lightning Central, right?
No, I'm like in Tornado Alley.
We get lightning too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. My mom lives in Florida, so she actually sees a lot of lightning too. I mean, Florida, they get lightning a lot, right? Here in New Jersey, we actually got a fair number of lightning storms. This past summer has been really, really wild. So, yeah, definitely grounding is something you need to consider. One thing I wanted to touch on was computer. What's your plan for getting a computer? Because you said you want to do contesting, and for contesting today, you absolutely need a computer. So what's the plan for the computer?
I was going to use my Surface Pro.
Okay.
Worst
There's
case scenario, I've got an old computer I can probably maybe hook up and it'll work. Maybe.
yeah. Okay. Computers are good. I mean, some people like, their own dedicated Shack desktop computer. I have one. I'm probably going to replace that with a low power PC because I want to save the power, and I also want to have it there as a backup to remote in my station. But here are my thoughts on this. If you're using a Surface, that's fine. They actually gave me a Surface that worked, and I used that for some time. But are you going to have an external monitor or something else?
Yeah, I've got like 2-3 monitors around here.
Okay, and you have like a little a USB-C docking station or something, or?
Yes.
Okay, that works well. So you could plug in like your ICOM 7300, because I think that's what you said you were getting.
Mm-hmm.
And then you plug that in the USB in a docking station. And eventually, if you get a little tower and a tri-band beam or something, and you get a rotator, you could get a rotator controller that has a USB port, and you could use that to turn. And that works well. But here's something else you probably haven't considered. My friend Dave, WO2X, he is very big into Node-RED, right? And Node-RED is a technology that allows you to completely control your station from a Raspberry Pi, right? So you have these little $40, $35 Raspberry Pi.
Oh, I have one.
Yeah, they're great, right?
Haven't used it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I
Well,
have
we gotta fix that. Okay. We're gonna have you. Go ahead.
Somewhere.
Tell me.
It is
We're gonna
somewhere.
have you. We are gonna have you load up Node-RED on that, and we're gonna walk through a whole build, right? Of that. That's gonna be a.
Are you like gonna like come down here? Like I'm gonna be like FaceTiming you and getting you to do this.
We're gonna do it live on the stream.
Oh shoot!
Yeah.
Can we discuss that later? Because I don't want to screw up. I just would rather do it perfectly the first time.
Yeah.
Like 60% of the time, it's good all the time type thing.
We'll figure it out. Don't worry. But anyway, no, I think that's a cool thing to do. But Node-RED has become just so popular in amateur radio. And Dave is just, he wrote an article for QST on it. And so if you have, I think it's last month's QST, a couple months ago, QST about Node-RED. Really nice and pretty good. Yeah, Gwen says a Raspberry Pi 3 running Ambi server. Cool. Raspberry Pis are good. I think Frank the Tank does it a lot, right? Okay, Carlisle. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I could bring in Kyle sometime. That'll be cool. Kyle, Kyle, you see, you're getting lots of help here, Kat, okay?
Yeah, somebody said it's okay to screw up. That's part of learning. Oh, crap. What did you do, Raven?
I think the cat knocked down her.
Yeah, okay. She totally knocked down my my camera over here, and she's she almost did it again.
Yeah. So yeah, no, we'll totally make this a thing. Don't worry about it. And I screw up a lot, so not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
I haven't blown up anything. So,
yeah. So we've covered quite a lot, and I think we definitely need to do another follow-up on station building. I really want to thank everybody for taking part. Kat, you have anything else you want to talk about regard to station building? For part 1, we're actually, since we had so much to cover, I think we're going to do a part 2.
we'll do a part 2, but later. But no, that was it for part 1.
Okay. All right, guys and gals, and thank you very much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to both of our channels, Rhea Shackhound Radio and Dixie DX.
DX Amateur Radio. So thanks for watching Two Chicks and a Radio. This is Kat, W4DXY, and this is
Rhea and 2RJ. All right. And yeah, we're definitely going to continue on the station building theme. I think it's great. Some people, they have big station building websites and such like that, and they build a whole big station with a lot of expensive equipment. I think it's going to be nice to see Cat Station, build out of simplicity. And even if she doesn't build out a whole thing, I have things that's going on too. So, we'll do that. All right. Thank you, everybody. And 73.
73, y'all. Thanks.